Delusion, watery, security, anxiety with an overview. The framework debate, I'm just going to put, I have it as 2C1, so I'm just going to...
Yeah.
Can you give the other one?
Yeah. Delusion, watery, security, anxiety.
So you're starting security on framework?
Correct.
Cool.
Oh, there's a short overview of the top of anxiety. Anyone not ready? Study the 2AC5 structural fall first debate. Competition devil, he says we can't check what we can. First of all, we widen the gap between the United States and the powers that empirically means they do not go to war. That's our wealth evidence, and our great evidence too is it checks the force of nationalism. That's our second advantage. Third is the fact that they play them against each other is our argument because it proves these sort of competition can be manipulated in an effective way. We control the specificity of this question on the question in terms of high school workers, except the number 6 states inevitably acting out self-interest, which means that this, if you're inevitable, the only question is whether or not we can direct them in a productive direction, which is the just makes the question of our link terms that I'll be getting to on anxiety. Now, the security argument, the framework debate, we agree with most of their compromise. The plan good as offense. They can argue the consequences of the plan would be bad because of some alleged methodological problems. However, their fear evidence is just a reason why the critique terms case is not required and does not itself justify a prioritization of certain impacts over other impacts. If we win, that the ends justify. That means also trying to establish history prioritization would be unfair. This is a 2AC fairness argument, which they didn't really come to terms with, which is to say that if they try to direct the question of the debate to any other question other than one that the federal government should act, it is unpredictable because the resolution asks the question of should that shows all value to debate, whether it is clash related or policy or politically related, because we don't know what we are debating, which means we can't prepare to debate it. There's no value to such debate. You ask, well, just go get a library card. That's only a risk that our form debate can be good, which means that they class debate that there's no offense with their interpretation except our wealth and great evidence. They said that they just says that makes the world more interesting and be interesting in terms of nuclear weapons, which I think we've all agreed is bad in our Zachariah ethics. In case we actually check on national solutions, I think we still have an impact to our affirmative at the bottom. I want you to extend the number 9, which is the total evidence, which indicates that our fear can be directed productively because in the context of economic rationality, that fear is generated in terms of shared risk, which means it's not the same kind of fear that represses anxiety that they're talking about, because it requires a recognition of a common anxiety, like someone who works at the stock market recognizes their investment might fail. Now, extended number 10, I think this applies to a lot of their other arguments, although I'm not going to allege that it was like a conceited thing that takes them out. It does say that the logic is similar. So saying that the logic is similar to something does not mean that the logic causes something. If you have to draw a line between the affirmative and these sorts of violence that might be able to occur in the abstract, and the Dean evidence, which in case that we add to our zone of uncertainty when we engage in political action, this resolves their argument about the potential for pressing immigrants in their collusion with the affirmative. Now, the anxiety overview. The case outweighs first, we control the escalation of conflict. Our world evidence indicates it doesn't escalate our world strong use of Germany because other countries don't initiate wars because they think that initiating that war means going to war directly in the United States, which is weird. The only scenario for a nuclear war actually happening is well, if the alternative, they don't resolve what other countries think, which means that we literally control the uniqueness to the relevant nebulous nuclear violence impacts once we have mitigation of vital life arguments. The alternative can't resolve any of the link arguments as other countries inevitably think in the ways that you in terms of power vacuum. A power vacuum is then overworld of the alternative, which they can't resolve. They don't have solved the evidence indicates they spill over, which means that they're spotting us that we can layer at the impacts. I don't see how they would. Some points, even if they have a perfect answer to this question, you need to ask how that answer gets transmitted. This debate has become an abstract comparison of if we thought this, if we thought that, which begs the question of what gates things, which is something that only our blood evidence speaks to. Some point, migrant communities serve as or straight on state violence, national drive towards wars based on the demonization of death, which is not possible. And then other lives with us when we have places like our communities, places like Silicon Valley, that create a check on that violence. Now the line on fear is not all consuming. That's a 2AC1. Their argument is that totalizing understanding of fear. This is essentially a double-blind argument. Either A, some point A, anytime you say nuclear war, you're paranoid and all about fears of death and you're oppressing your existential anxiety, and none of those fears can be warranted. Or B, there is such a thing as a legitimate concern, which begs the question of why the affirmative isn't one. The evidence I read in crossing as well as most of their link arguments basically just boils down to anytime you're in fear of something, you're engaging in this totalizing repression of all anxiety, which is just silly and proved by the examples of unprotected sex. Well, I don't like that one as much, but the other ones that are in the 2AC, it's not Roxanne and Valenti evidence, which explains that the inclusion of a solvency component of our affirmative acts is a check on that form of existential anxiety. We don't allow it to get out of control because we can limit it and recognize there are some issues in which we control that. In some areas in which we control the anxiety, some areas in which we can't. Not this, there's no scenario for our impacts. The 1AC assumes the 1AC argues that power vacuums are dangerous, so dangerous. In fact, we can't know exactly why, what power will challenge what power. That's just a recognition of how dangerous they are. Our argument is that the scenario that is relevant is the scenario for the concept of competitiveness and Germany, which has empirically led to wars. I tried to list historical examples in the process of coming off, which proves that this is just a self-serving argument for the links. Not something they're genuinely sort of a big link to these arguments as well. That was Kathy's argument for the cross-sectors, most of their business now. And some of them for the alternative now be able to solve the cost of negative fact costs of change. Sharp evidence do not say it's too expensive, and so it collapses our economy, says it's too expensive, and therefore they can never be actualized, which means that the affirmative is the only way to actualize something that could actually pass in a world in which somehow the Tea Party has become an important movement in America. Our argument is that the plan is most pragmatic way to include workers and create more understanding forms of economic competitiveness. And then number 5, they're alternative author votes after fear, anxiety distinction. Does not make any sense in this context. They say you're judged based on result. This argument is an abstract comparison that makes the best the enemy of the good. The world is full of scare. The world is full of scarcities. We have the only address to resolve this. There, we have behind this evidence, which talks about the inflation of violence, which proves the link to our double argument. They say this nanny evidence about science diplomacy. We didn't read science diplomacy advantage. They say consciousness assumes when they're myopic, focused on death argument in general, think they do, which proves that there is room for valuable life within the world of the affirmative. They continue to value life as a subjective determination anyway, which means that as long as people are not willing to not kill themselves, there's probably some value to life anyway. You shouldn't try to know for something else. They say ontology. They say on ontology first, but that you can act while still reconsidering your ontology. This Taylor in 2000 all times much for reasons not really apparent either. They have a question that didn't history not just whether critical each end of ontology essentially and any kind of ontology which transform weak ontology for any therapeutic so and for any graphical to our finish the critical questions for reinterpretation if we want any of the reasons why you should for our case above it means that ontology just interacts with the claims doesn't turn in now the blight argument. They answer the blight argument are obviously does not indict the extrapolation of individual policy states that says that they do not create change that policymakers actually recognize that they are focused on state security, which means if you don't provide economic explanations that make sense to them, that your psychology argument's never get off the ground, which means they don't actually create change. Down center of methods indicates that our method is self-correcting, that we can create better forms of predictions, and that we're not the kind of paranoid they do. And being paranoid in some instances is good, but that we can check the excesses of that paranoia. They make a bunch of arguments on why they solve it better, but this presumes a world in which our fears are inflated, which they're not, or a world in which the alternative can engage in some kind of fear, which they still haven't explained. The distinction between fear and anxiety just fundamentally doesn't make any sense because their link argument is basically just like you can never fear nuclear war, which is just silly because sometimes there are real things.